Steve Harvey has seen every kind of reveal that the Family Feud stage can produce. He has seen planned confrontations with evidence folders. He has seen spontaneous breakdowns where the truth spilled out mid-round. He has seen mothers-in-law expose secrets and 6-year-old children repeat things they were never supposed to hear. But on an April evening in 2027, something happened on his stage that blindsided everyone in the building, including the wife herself. Because the affair was not revealed by the wife, it was not revealed by a family member, it was not revealed by a phone notification or a credit card statement. It was revealed by the other woman, who was on the opposing team, standing on the other side of Steve Harvey's stage, competing against the wife without either woman knowing they were connected to the same man, until a single answer on the survey board made everything collide. There was a time when the odds of something like this happening were so astronomical that nobody would have believed it. Two women, connected to the same man, randomly assigned to compete against each other on a nationally televised game show, neither knowing the other existed. It sounds like fiction, but it happened. On Steve Harvey's stage, under his lights, in front of his cameras. And when the collision occurred, when both women realized simultaneously what was happening, Steve Harvey stood between them with an expression on his face that was not shock, not comedy, not his famous reaction face. It was the expression of a man who was watching the universe deliver a justice so precise and so improbable that it felt orchestrated by something bigger than coincidence. And what happened in the minutes that followed was unlike anything Family Feud had ever produced. If you believe that the truth has its own timing and that the universe has a way of putting people exactly where they need to be, hit that like button and subscribe to our channel right now. What happens on this stage is so improbable, so perfectly timed, and so devastating that Steve Harvey himself said it was the closest thing to divine intervention he had ever witnessed on television. To understand the full scope of what happened, you need to know both women, because this story has two protagonists, not one, and neither of them was the villain. On one side of the stage was Cheryl Lawson, 37 years old, from Charlotte, North Carolina. Cheryl was the daughter of a retired postal worker named Frank Davenport and a church organist named Alma, who had played the same organ at the same church for 40 years without missing a single Sunday. Cheryl was raised in a household where consistency was the highest virtue. Her father delivered mail on the same route for 30 years. Her mother played the same hymns in the same key at the same tempo every week. There were no surprises in the Davenport household. Surprises were what happened to other people. Alma used to tell Cheryl, "Baby, the Lord does not do random. Everything happens in its time and for a reason. Even the things that hurt, especially the things that hurt." Cheryl believed her mother. She had no idea how much that belief was about to be tested. Cheryl earned a degree in elementary education from UNC Charlotte and spent 12 years teaching 3rd grade at a public school in the Charlotte suburbs. She was the kind of teacher who stayed after hours to tutor struggling students and who spent her own money on classroom supplies because the school budget never covered what the children actually needed. Her principal said Cheryl had the rarest quality a teacher could possess. She made every child feel like they mattered, even on their worst days. She did this by paying attention, by noticing the small shifts in mood, the changes in behavior, the quiet signs that something at home was not right. Cheryl was a noticer. She read children the way her mother read sheet music, by watching for the patterns and catching the notes that were off key. She met Marcus Lawson at a teacher appreciation event when she was 24. Marcus was 27, a regional IT support technician for a school district in the Charlotte area. He serviced computer labs and network systems at schools across 3 counties, which meant he was constantly on the road, moving from school to school, rarely in the same place twice in 1 week. He was friendly, competent, and had an easy charm that made teachers and administrators like him immediately. He and Cheryl connected over their shared commitment to education. They dated for 2 years and married at Alma's church, with Alma playing the processional herself, the same hymn she had played at every wedding in that building for 4 decades. For the first 10 years, the marriage appeared stable. They had 2 children. Their daughter, Jade, was now 11. perceptive and empathetic, with her mother's teaching instincts and her grandmother Alma's patience. Their son Cameron was 8, energetic and curious, who asked questions about everything and retained the answers with a memory that impressed his teachers. Cheryl continued teaching. Marcus continued his IT work, traveling across the region, servicing schools, and coming home most evenings with stories about crashed servers and confused teachers who could not find the power button. On the other side of the stage was Brittany Cole, 32 years old, from Raleigh, North Carolina, about 2.5 hours from Charlotte. Brittany was a dental hygienist who worked at a family practice in Raleigh. She was warm, outgoing, and had the kind of personality that put anxious patients at ease. She was the youngest of 4 siblings, all raised by a single mother named Gloria Cole, a home health aide who had spent her career caring for elderly patients and who had taught all 4 of her children the same lesson. Trust is earned, not given. Make people earn it before you hand it over. Brittany had tried to live by that standard. She had thought she succeeded. Brittany had been in a relationship for 3 years with a man she knew as Marcus. He told her he was a divorced IT consultant who traveled for work. He visited her in Raleigh regularly, usually on weekends, and they had built what Brittany believed was a genuine, committed relationship. He had met her mother Gloria. He had attended her niece's birthday party. He had talked about moving to Raleigh permanently once his divorce was finalized. Brittany believed every word because Marcus was convincing and because she had checked, as Gloria taught her, and everything he told her seemed to line up. She did not know that what she was checking was a carefully curated fiction. The Family Feud teams had been assembled independently. Cheryl's team was Marcus, Cheryl's sister Dawn, Frank, and Alma. Brittany's team was Brittany, Gloria, Brittany's older brother Deshaun, her coworker Tamika, and her cousin Jada. 2 families from 2 cities, connected to the same man, randomly matched against each other by a production system that had no way of knowing what it had done. Marcus Lawson did not know Brittany's team had been accepted. He did not know she would be at the taping. He walked onto that stage with his wife on one side and his entire secret on the other, separated by a podium and a survey board, and the increasingly thin veil of a double life that was about to be shredded by the most improbable coincidence in television history. The introductions began on the Lawson side. Steve worked his way down the lineup. Marcus introduced Cheryl as, "My beautiful wife of 13 years, the best teacher in Charlotte." The audience applauded. Cheryl squeezed his arm. Alma stood at the end of the lineup with her hands folded, watching everything with the measured attention of a woman who had spent 4 decades reading the rhythm of a room from behind an organ. Then Steve crossed to the opposing team. He started the introductions. When he reached Brittany, he asked the standard question, "Tell me about yourself, sweetheart." Brittany smiled brightly. "Steve, I am Brittany. I am a dental hygienist from Raleigh. And this is my family." She introduced Gloria, Deshaun, Tamika, and Jada. Then she added, in the natural way people do when they are proud of their relationship, "And my boyfriend could not be here today because he travels for work. But he is watching from home. His name is Marcus and he is my biggest supporter." She said it casually. She said it with love, and the name traveled across the stage like a bullet in slow motion. Steve Harvey did not react. He had no reason to react. Marcus was one of the most common names in America. He nodded, smiled, and moved on. The game began, but on the Lawson side of the stage, something had just detonated silently. Dawn, Cheryl's sister, had heard the name. She had heard the city, Raleigh. She had heard, "travels for work," and she had turned her head slightly and looked at Marcus, who was standing 2 people away from her in the lineup. Marcus's face had not changed. His smile had not flickered. He was staring straight ahead at the survey board with the rigid focus of a man who was using every ounce of his concentration to not look across the stage. Dawn noticed. She filed it. She did not say anything. Not yet. The first round proceeded. Both teams played well. The energy was competitive and fun. Nobody watching would have suspected that anything was wrong. The game was doing what the game always did. It was filling time with laughter and tension and the thrill of correct answers. The second round began. Steve read the question. "We asked 100 women. Name something your man does that proves he is committed to you." The face-off was between Cheryl and Brittany. Both women hit the buzzer. Brittany was faster. Steve asked her for her answer. Brittany thought for a moment and said, with genuine warmth, "He drives 2 hours every weekend to see me. Even when he is tired from work, he always shows up." It was on the board. Number 3 answer. The audience clapped. Brittany's team celebrated, but the answer had sent a second invisible shockwave across the stage. Because Marcus Lawson's IT work territory covered schools within a 2-hour radius of Charlotte, and Raleigh was exactly 2 hours from Charlotte. Dawn's head turned again. This time she was not subtle. She looked directly at Marcus. Marcus was staring at the floor, not at the board, not at Steve, at the floor, and Dawn, who had known her brother-in-law for 13 years and who had never once seen him avoid eye contact during a competitive game, understood what she was seeing. She leaned toward Cheryl. The microphones did not catch what she whispered, but the cameras caught Cheryl's face as the whisper landed. Confusion first, then the slow, assembling recognition of a woman whose teacher's instinct for reading patterns was now being applied to the most devastating pattern of her life. Marcus, Raleigh, 2 hours, travels for work every weekend. Cheryl looked across the stage at Brittany, then she looked at Marcus, then she looked back at Brittany, and in her eyes was the specific, terrible clarity of a puzzle completing itself against the will of the person assembling it. The round continued. Brittany's team was playing the board. Answers came in. The game moved forward. But on the Lawson side, the game had already ended. Cheryl was no longer watching the board. She was watching Brittany. She was watching the way Brittany smiled. The way Brittany talked about her boyfriend with pride and affection. The way Brittany said, "Always shows up." And Cheryl recognized, with a sickness that started in her stomach and moved upward through her chest, that Brittany was not the villain of this story. Brittany was another victim, another woman who had been told a version of Marcus that did not include the truth. Then came the moment of collision. The board had one answer remaining. It was Brittany's turn again. Steve asked, "We still need one more answer. Name something your man does that proves he is committed to you." Brittany smiled and said, "He fixed my laptop for free. He is an IT guy. He can fix anything. IT guy, fix anything." The last piece snapped into place with an audible click that only existed inside Cheryl's head, but that might as well have been a gunshot for the impact it had. Cheryl stepped forward from her family's lineup. She did not walk to the podium. She walked to the center of the stage, to the space between the two teams, to the no man's land where Steve Harvey usually stood alone. "Steve," Cheryl said. Her voice was shaking but clear. "I need to stop the game, because I think her boyfriend and my husband are the same person." The studio did not gasp. It imploded. The silence came first, a vacuum so complete it felt like the building had been sealed. Then the sound, a wave of shocked voices, hands pressed to mouths, bodies leaning forward, the collective physical response of 200 people processing the most improbable revelation any of them had ever witnessed. Steve Harvey froze, not his comedic freeze, a real one. His brain was processing something it had no template for. 2 women, 2 teams, same man, randomly matched. On his stage, he looked at Cheryl, he looked at Brittany, he looked at Marcus, who was standing in the Lawson lineup with the blank, evacuated expression of a man whose 2 worlds had just collided in the one place he never imagined they could. Brittany's face underwent a transformation that was physically painful to watch. She looked at Cheryl. She looked at the Lawson family lineup, where a man named Marcus was standing beside a woman who had been introduced as his wife. She looked at her own mother, Gloria, who was standing beside her with the dawning, horrified expression of a woman who had taught her daughter to make people earn trust, and who was now watching that trust be destroyed. "Marcus," Brittany said, her voice breaking. She was not looking at the man on the other side of the stage. She was looking at the space between them, as if the distance itself held the answer. She said, "Husband." She said, 13 years. "Marcus, that is you. That is your name. You told me you were divorced. You told me the papers were almost final." Marcus Lawson stood in the lineup and said nothing. There was nothing to say. The 2 halves of his life were standing on the same stage, separated by 30 feet and a survey board, and the only thing connecting them was him. His wife on one side, his girlfriend on the other. both discovering the truth at the same moment, both looking at him with the same devastating question in their eyes, both betrayed by the same man who had been driving 2 hours in each direction, servicing one family in Charlotte and performing another in Raleigh, for 3 years. Steve Harvey pulled his earpiece out. His hand was unsteady. "Stop the game," he said. "Stop everything. Right now." Steve walked to center stage, to the exact space between the two teams, the space that Cheryl had already claimed when she stepped forward. He stood there for several seconds without speaking. When he did speak, his voice carried a weight that was different from any previous intervention. It carried bewilderment. "I need everyone in this building to understand what just happened. 2 families were randomly assigned to compete against each other on this show. The production team matched them through a normal process. Nobody knew anything about any connection between them. And it turns out that a man on one team is married to a woman on that team and has been in a 3-year relationship with a woman on the other team. Both women are standing on my stage right now. Neither knew about the other until 5 minutes ago. The odds of this happening, the mathematical odds of 2 women connected to the same man being placed on opposing Family Feud teams on the same taping day, are so small that I do not think a number exists for it. But it happened, on my stage, and I am standing in the middle of it." He turned to Cheryl first. "Cheryl, your sister noticed the details. The name, the city, the travel, the IT work. She put it together before you did. And when she whispered it to you, I watched your face change. I watched a woman who teaches 3rd graders how to solve problems apply that same skill to the worst problem of her life. You connected the dots in real time, on national television, and instead of falling apart, you walked to the center of this stage and told me what you suspected. That took a composure that I cannot fully comprehend." Then Steve turned to Brittany. His voice softened further. "Brittany, I need you to hear something. You are not the other woman in the way that phrase is usually used. You did not know. Your mother taught you to make people earn your trust, and this man earned it with a lie. He told you he was divorced. He drove to Raleigh every weekend and built a relationship with you and your family based on a fiction. You introduced him to your mother. You trusted him, and the trust was real, Brittany. Your trust was real. It was his honesty that was fake, and that is his failure, not yours." Brittany was crying. Gloria had her arm around her daughter and was looking across the stage at Marcus with an expression that could have melted steel. Deshaun, Brittany's brother, was physically vibrating with restrained fury, his hands opening and closing at his sides. Steve turned to Marcus. "Marcus, I am going to tell you something, and I want you to feel the full weight of it. You are standing on my stage between your wife and your girlfriend. Both of them found out about each other because the universe put them on opposing teams of a game show. You did not get caught by a detective. You did not get caught by a phone. You got caught by the most improbable coincidence I have ever witnessed. And that tells me something I believe with everything I have. The truth does not care about your plans. It does not care about your schedule or your 2-hour drive or your carefully separated lives. The truth has its own timing. And its timing tonight was to put these 2 women on the same stage and let the facts speak for themselves." He continued, "You called your wife the best teacher in Charlotte. She is, because she just read a situation in real time and identified the pattern that you have been hiding for 3 years. And you called yourself Brittany's biggest supporter. But the biggest supporter of a woman he loves does not lie about having a wife and 2 children in another city. You are not a supporter, Marcus. You are a fraud. And tonight, on my stage, through no one's planning and everyone's shock, the fraud was exposed by nothing more than a name, a city, and a woman who said her boyfriend drives 2 hours to see her every weekend." The audience response was enormous. But it was not the unified applause of previous episodes. It was layered with shock, anger, sadness, and the specific disorientation that comes from witnessing something so improbable that the brain struggles to categorize it. Then something happened that no one expected. Cheryl walked across the stage. Not toward Marcus. Toward Brittany. She crossed the divide between the 2 teams, the space that separated her family from the woman she had just learned was connected to her husband, and she stopped in front of Brittany Cole. "I do not blame you. Cheryl said. Her voice was shaking, but her words were precise. He lied to both of us. You thought he was single. I thought he was faithful. We were both wrong, but neither of us was wrong because we did something wrong. We were wrong because he lied, and I am not going to stand on one side of this stage and look at you like an enemy when you are standing on the other side holding the same hurt I am holding. Brittany broke down completely. She reached for Cheryl's hands and held them, and for a moment that the cameras captured from every angle, and that would eventually be viewed by over 100 million people. Two women who had been unknowingly sharing the same man stood in the center of the Family Feud stage, holding each other's hands, connected not by the man who had deceived them but by the mutual recognition that they had both loved honestly and been betrayed by the same dishonesty. Gloria, Brittany's mother, the woman who taught her daughter to make people earn trust, walked from her team's lineup, crossed the stage, and stood beside both women. She looked at Cheryl and said, I fed that man dinner at my table. I let him into my home. I trusted him because my daughter trusted him, and he sat in my kitchen and lied to both of us. I am sorry, Cheryl. I am sorry he used my family as part of his mother. Alma, Cheryl's mother, the church organist who had played the same hymns for 40 years and who believed that the Lord does not do random, walked from her team's lineup and joined the group in the center. She put one arm around Cheryl and one arm around Brittany, a woman she had never met until 20 minutes ago, and said, I told my daughter that everything happens in its time and for a reason. Even the things that hurt. This is the time, and the reason is standing right over there. She pointed at Marcus without looking at him. The reason is that this man needed to be seen for who he is, and the Lord put both of you on the same stage so that he could not hide anymore. The standing ovation was the longest and most emotionally complex of any episode. 4 women, 2 mothers and 2 daughters from 2 different families, standing together in the center of a game show stage, united not by blood but by betrayal, and by the shared refusal to let that betrayal turn them against each other. Steve Harvey stood at the edge of the group with tears streaming down his face and addressed the camera. In all my years of television, I have never seen what I just saw. 2 women who were placed on opposing teams by random chance discovered that they are connected to the same man, and instead of turning on each other, they turned toward each other. Cheryl walked across the stage and told Brittany she did not blame her. 2 mothers joined them. 4 women are standing in the center of my stage holding each other, and the man who caused all of this is standing alone on the side, exactly where he deserves to be. I have said many times on this stage that the truth has its own timing, but tonight I learned that the truth also has its own casting director. It put these 2 women on the same stage, it gave them the same questions, and it let a single answer, a woman saying her boyfriend drives 2 hours to see her, unravel a 3-year lie. That is not coincidence. That is something bigger, and whatever you call it, God, fate, karma, the universe, it showed up tonight, on my stage, and it did not miss. The game was never completed. Both families received their full prizes and compensation. The production team later confirmed that the matching of the 2 families had been entirely random and that no connection between the teams had been identified during the screening process. Marcus Lawson had applied separately with each family, listing different contact information, and the system had not flagged the duplicate name because it screened by household, not by individual. The production team implemented new screening protocols afterward to prevent a similar situation, though they acknowledged that the probability of it occurring again was astronomically low. When the episode aired 7 weeks later, it became the most viewed Family Feud episode in the show's history. The clip surpassed 200 million views in the first month. It was not just the revelation that drove the views, it was the improbability. Media analysts, statisticians, and probability experts all weighed in on the odds of 2 women connected to the same man being randomly assigned to opposing teams on the same game show taping. The estimates ranged from 1 in several million to 1 in several hundred million, depending on the assumptions used. The phrase, "the universe does not do random," trended globally, borrowed from Alma's comment about the Lord's timing. It became a cultural touchstone for any situation in which a coincidence felt too precise to be accidental. But the moment that resonated most deeply, the one that was shared more than the revelation itself, was Cheryl crossing the stage to hold Brittany's hands. That image, two women choosing solidarity over animosity in the most publicly painful moment of their lives, became a symbol that transcended the episode. Women's organizations used it in campaigns about redirecting blame from the other woman to the dishonest partner. Relationship counselors used it as a teaching example about the choice between conflict and compassion in the aftermath of betrayal. The image was printed, shared, and referenced so widely that it became shorthand for the idea that two women deceived by the same man are not enemies. They are witnesses to the same crime. Cheryl returned to Charlotte and went back to teaching. She filed for divorce within 3 weeks. Dawn, who had been the first to notice the connection on stage, helped Cheryl through the process with the fierce protectiveness of an older sister who blamed herself for not seeing the signs sooner. Cheryl told her, "You could not have seen it because he was not doing it in Charlotte. He was doing it 2 hours away." That is the whole point of a 2-hour drive. It creates distance between the lives. You did not miss anything, Dawn. You caught it. On a game show stage in real time from a whisper. That is not a failure. That is a save. Brittany returned to Raleigh and ended the relationship immediately. She did not struggle with the decision. The moment she learned Marcus had a wife and children, the relationship was over. Gloria later told a reporter, "My daughter did not hesitate. She did not ask for explanations. She did not give him a chance to spin another story. She heard the word wife and she was done. I taught her that trust is earned. And the moment the trust is proven fraudulent, you walk." Brittany walked. I could not be prouder. Cheryl and Brittany stayed in contact after the taping. They talked on the phone several times in the weeks that followed, comparing timelines, filling in gaps, and constructing the full picture of Marcus's double life that neither had been able to see alone. The conversations were painful but clarifying. They discovered that Marcus had been meticulous in his scheduling, always in Charlotte on weekdays and in Raleigh on weekends, using his IT travel as cover for both lives. They discovered that he had told Brittany the same stories he told Cheryl, sometimes word for word. And they discovered, with a dark humor that helped them process the absurdity, that he had given both of them the same anniversary date, August 15th, because, as Cheryl put it, apparently he could not even be original with his lies. Marcus Lawson did not make a public statement. He left Charlotte after the divorce was finalized and relocated to a different state. People close to the situation said he cooperated with the legal proceedings and did not contest any of Cheryl's requests. His silence, in contrast to the noise his double life had produced, was its own kind of statement. Steve Harvey spoke about the episode at multiple events. At a faith-based conference, he gave a speech that was viewed over 60 million times. I have been asked 1,000 times if I believe in coincidence, and my answer has always been the same. I believe that some things happen that are too perfectly timed and too precisely aimed to be random. And the night that two women connected to the same man were randomly placed on opposing Family Feud teams is the night that confirmed that belief permanently. Because the odds of that happening by chance are so small they are essentially zero, which means it was not chance. It was something else. Something that wanted those two women to be in the same room at the same time so that the truth could no longer be divided by a 2-hour drive. Call it what you want. I call it justice with a sense of timing. Alma gave one interview. She sat at her organ in the church where she had played for 40 years and spoke with the measured conviction of a woman whose faith had just been confirmed in the most dramatic way imaginable. I told Cheryl that the Lord does not do random, that everything happens in its time and for a reason, and people say that as a comfort, as a platitude, something to make the hurt feel purposeful, but I watched it happen, Mr. Harvey. I stood on that stage and I watched two families brought together by a system that did not know what it was doing, and the system put them exactly where they needed to be. My daughter found out the truth not because she investigated, not because someone told her, because God put the truth on the other side of the stage and let the game do the rest. That is not a coincidence. That is a sermon. and I have been playing the organ long enough to know when the music is being conducted by someone other than me. Jade, Cheryl's 11-year-old daughter, asked her mother a question several weeks after the episode that Cheryl said was the most profound thing a child had ever said to her. They were sitting at the kitchen table and Jade said, "Mom, Grandma Alma says nothing is random, so was it supposed to happen? Were you and Brittany supposed to be on the same stage?" Cheryl thought about it for a long time. Then she said, "I think so, baby. I think the truth was tired of being split between two cities. I think it needed both of us in the same room so it could finally be whole. Because a truth that only one person knows is only half a truth. Brittany and I each had half. And when we stood on the same stage, the halves came together, and the whole truth was bigger than anything your father could hide." Jade nodded slowly and said, "That is what you teach us in school, Mom. When you put the pieces together, you see the whole picture." Cheryl held her daughter and realized that the lesson she had been teaching third graders about reading comprehension was the same lesson the universe had just taught her about her marriage. The pieces were always there. They just needed to be in the same room. 1 year later, Family Feud invited Cheryl back for a special update. She walked onto the stage to a standing ovation that lasted over 90 seconds. She wore a deep green dress and her grandmother's watch, a family heirloom that Alma had given her on the anniversary of the episode, saying, "Time revealed the truth." Where the time? Beside Cheryl, in the front row, sat Alma with her hands folded in her lap the way they rested on organ keys, Dawn with her arm ready to go around her sister at a moment's notice, Jade with a notebook in her lap, because she had started journaling after the experience, and Cameron, who was 9 now and who was wearing a shirt that said, "Team Mum," because Dawn had bought it for him and he refused to take it off. And beside the Lawson family, separated by one empty seat, sat Brittany Cole. She had asked to come. Cheryl had agreed. They had become friends in the year since the episode, connected by the strangest and most painful circumstances imaginable, and bonded by the shared experience of rebuilding their lives after the same man dismantled them. Brittany wore a simple white blouse and sat beside Gloria, who was holding her daughter's hand the way she had held it since Brittany was small. Steve hugged Cheryl. Then he looked at Brittany in the front row and nodded. Then he asked Cheryl how she was doing. Cheryl smiled, a genuine, complicated, hard-won smile. "Steve, I am teaching. That is what I do. I go to school every morning and I teach third graders how to put pieces together to see the whole picture. And last year, on your stage, I had to do the same thing for myself. I heard a name. I heard a city. I heard a distance. And I put the pieces together. It was the hardest lesson I have ever learned. But I learned it. And now I teach my students something extra that is not in the curriculum. I tell them that when something does not add up, trust your math. Even when you wish the answer was different, trust your math. Because the numbers do not lie. People lie. Numbers do not." Steve looked at Brittany. "Brittany, do you want to say anything?" Brittany stood up from the front row. Her voice was steady. "Cheryl crossed a stage to hold my hands on the worst day of my life. She did not know me. She had every reason to hate me. And instead, she chose to see me as what I was. Not the other woman, just another woman who was lied to. That walk she took across the stage is the bravest thing anyone has ever done for me. And it taught me something my mama always said, but that I did not fully understand until that moment. Trust is earned. But compassion is given. Cheryl gave me compassion when I did not think I deserved it, and I will spend the rest of my life being grateful for those 10 steps she took across that stage." Steve Harvey stood at center stage, tears on his face, and delivered his final words. 1 year ago, 2 women were randomly placed on opposing Family Feud teams. They did not know each other. They were connected by a man who had lied to both of them, and when the truth came out, through a name, a city, and a 2-hour drive, they did not fight. They did not blame each other. They walked to the center of the stage and held hands. 2 mothers joined them. 4 women stood together. And a man stood alone. That image is the legacy of this episode, not the betrayal, not the coincidence. The walk. Cheryl crossing the stage toward Brittany instead of away from her. That walk is worth more than any answer on any survey board in the history of this show. because it answered the only question that matters. When the truth puts two people in the same room, will they turn on each other or turn toward each other? Cheryl and Brittany turned toward each other, and the whole world watched, and the whole world learned. The audience rose one final time. Alma sat at the edge of her seat with her hands folded, her lips moving in what might have been a prayer or might have been a hymn, because for Alma, the two had always been the same thing. Gloria held Brittany's hand, Dawn had her arm around Cheryl, and in the front row, two families that had been on opposing sides of a game show stage 1 year earlier were now sitting together, separated by one empty seat that no one mentioned but everyone understood, the seat that Marcus Lawson would have occupied. The seat that was empty now. Not because he had walked out, because he had been removed by the truth, removed by the most improbable coincidence in television history, removed by a name, a city, and a woman who said her boyfriend drives 2 hours to see her every weekend. The universe had cast the show, and the casting was perfect. If this story reminded you that the truth has its own timing, that compassion is the bravest response to betrayal, and that sometimes the universe puts people exactly where they need to be so the lies can finally end, hit that like button right now. Subscribe to this channel and turn on that notification bell so you never miss another powerful story. We bring you the most incredible and emotional Family Feud moments every single week. Real families, real coincidences, and real truth. Thank you for watching, and we will see you in the next one.